Throughout this video and those of this series, we'll be referring back to Saundra McGuire's list of 10 metacognitive strategies, as featured in her book, Teach Students How to Learn. But here, we'll be looking at certain specific strategies that we use with students and as part of the UNIV curriculum. We'll also be looking at how these strategies led to the development of tools we promote with the concept of the study cycle. In short, our approach in this video will be to introduce one or more strategies, a tool in the form of a worksheet, a handout, planner edition, and then a detailed explanation of how to encourage our students to use all of this in their own studies. McGuire's first 5 metacognitive strategies all have to do with reading the textbook assigned for each course, so we know that that's important. Next, we'll talk about what comes after the reading, namely attending class and taking notes from the lecture. Then we'll look to the third phase of the study cycle and talk about the actual studying. What is studying? How is it different from memorizing? And which will help them do well on the test? Finally, we'll be talking about the assessment phase of the study cycle and look at ways to encourage students to adopt this cycle as a habit for all courses, regardless of how many tests or quizzes there will be. Just as a side note, because so many of EMU students are admitted with a requirement for developmental math, we'll be paying special attention to doing well in quantitative courses. Finally, we're also going to look at a couple of other tools that can help students develop college-level study skills, namely, how to break apart a large assignment, essay, project, how to create goals that can be broken down into an actual game plan. In a perfect world, we'd be able to teach students that each course they take in college will follow this predictable study cycle, and that developing this cycle as a habit early on is going to lead to higher grades, credits completed, persistence toward a degree. However, you can probably expect a lot of pushback on this concept. We'll be looking at the idea of studying being a cycle of continuous activity, not something that you do just before the exam near the end of the semester. So this is not your father's studying, right? We're looking at how students are studying currently and helping them change and develop great habits, that studying is a continuous process. If you're unfamiliar of the coursework or study cycle, the 4 phases are read. That one should be obvious. However, you'd be surprised how much it's not obvious to our students. Again, don't confuse the familiar with obvious. Step number 2, go to class. Take notes, preferably by hand. Step 3, actively study. What does actively studying mean? Not just looking notes over or rereading the text. And 4, assess. Do the thing, whether the thing is a test, a paper, an assignment, and students need to understand that when there is no test or thing offered by the instructor, they should be testing themselves to complete this loop and keep the cycle going. Many courses will have only 2 or 3 exams over the semester. Students definitely need convincing they should be assessing their own learning along the way. The weekend before the midterm is far too late to be getting started with serious studying. We have a lesson on time management in UNIV where you'll teach students this process more in depth. But for now, I'd just like to give you a quick peek at what mapping out the study cycle onto a semester plan looks like. We start off by using the course schedule, typically attached to the course syllabus, but sometimes just a document in Canvas, to note what's going on each class period, when the exams are, what assignments will be due. I like to encourage students to use color coding here just to keep things straight. Next, the student needs to determine what actions they'll be taking outside of those class periods. That means doing the reading and studying after the lecture. Once you have all of this mapped out on the semester, it's easy to create a to-do list by week. Finally, the student should have already identified their study periods, those blocks of time dedicated to studying and doing homework. A student who's taking 12 credit hours should optimally be looking at about 24 hours or more each week outside of class. Assign the to-do items to specific blocks of time in order to complete tasks before they're due. For example, the act of reading of a chapter should come before the lecture for that chapter, and studying notes from the lecture and the reading will come after. Here's a clipped example from a sociology syllabus. For the week of September 30th, the instructor will lecture on Chapter 4 on Monday and begin the lecture for Chapter 5 on Wednesday. That makes the study period on Tuesday a great fit for studying Chapter 4's notes, and the time on Thursday can be designated for reading actively to prepare for the next week. Notice that the mock quiz has been scheduled into time set aside for a study group. This is a great activity for students to work together in active learning. Also, the student will be quizzing themselves on Chapter 3 and 4. This instructor only has 2 exams for the entire semester. The first is over chapters 1 through 6, and the final is over chapters 7 through 14. So it makes a lot of sense for this student to be quizzing themselves on more than one chapter at a time. Great job! You're now ready to move on to part 2 of learning strategies and the study cycle. The next short video will take you through the first step in the study cycle. That one is all about reading, and by that we mean actively reading. I'll see you there soon.